Right, thanks very much, Robert. And since I know there's some Americans in the audience, I'll just answer the question before you ask them. Yes, I do wear a wig when I go into court. No, I haven't brought it with me. And why? And for the rest of you, why have we called it the Thomas More Legal Centre? Simply because there aren't that many lawyers who are saints. So, you're there on 40 Days for Life, praying away desperately, and you're approached by a big burly policeman, or it could be a big burly policewoman, as has happened in Doncaster recently. How do you respond? Well, in one sense, from a lawyer's point of view, I should be telling you how to get yourself arrested because, bluntly, I need the work. But I'm going to tell you how not to be arrested. Because, yeah, it can be very glamorous, let's go and be martyrs for the cause. But you've got to try and always keep your eye on the bigger picture, which is what this whole conference is about. Opponents of pro-life groups, such as ourselves, such as 40 Days for Life, what they want is to try and show 40 Days for Life and similar organisations as fanatics, unreasonable, troublemakers, harassing women at abortion clinics. That's what they want. That's the image that they are constantly projecting. That is the story that they are constantly telling. You as the people there have to make sure that you never provide them with any ammunition for that. The one thing they would love is a nice little video, and make no doubt about it, there'll be somebody there with a video camera of you being dragged away, kicking and screaming into a police van. Because that then will be shown all over YouTube and to MPs and so forth. Look at what these 40 Days for Life people are like. So that's what you've got to avoid. So that's one of the general principles. Hopefully I'm not telling any of you anything that you wouldn't do anyway. But basically, starting point, always be polite and patient. You're approached by this big burly policeman. Well, I was going to say always be polite to a big burly policeman. Just be polite anyway. And be willing to discuss matters with them. They haven't turned up just because they've got it in for you. They've had a complaint from, it might be the staff at Mary Stopes or BPAS or whatever. They've turned up because of this. And they just want to find out what the situation is. Police tend to form opinions very rapidly. If they turn up and there's a whole group there who appear aggressive, shouting at them and so forth, they form, these are the troublemakers. If they turn up and there's a sort of fairly quiet group there just saying their prayers and somebody turns up and says, yes, officer, can I help you? Oh, right. They're in, okay, we've got some people here we can talk to. They will probably have been told, these people, they're videoing these women going in to our clinic. The women have been frightened by this. They've been intimidated. They're worried that their pictures are going to be put up on the internet. Now, so the police officer said, well, we've heard you've been taking pictures, you're videoing. Now, can I have a look? At that point, there's no point sort of standing on your high horse and your legal rights, well, this is my camera, this is private. Say, oh, there's my camera. Have a look at it. If you want to look at the videos, please have a look, officer. We don't do that. There you are. Look at it. Because if you ever did end up in court, from my point of view as a defence lawyer, it's actually wonderful to be able to say, well, isn't it correct, officer, that my client offered to show you a camera so you could check whether there are any pictures, and you refused? Is that correct? Well, much better than the officer saying, well, I told him to be taking pictures, and he's got a camera, and he said, well, I'm not showing you my camera. None of your business. It's private, my private property. I've got my human rights. For God's sake, don't mention human rights, please. If there's one thing that's going to get up the nose of a police officer, it's somebody's talking about human rights. So, engage. Engage does not mean try to turn them into pro-life police officers who are going to be sort of with you next week. It's engaging with them to get them to see you as reasonable people engaged in a legitimate activity which others may disagree with, but nevertheless you have a right to do, and you are doing in a peaceful, calm way. That's what you have to do. And the other point is, if you are given instructions by the police, they may well be instructions which are unlawful. They may well be instructions which are legally questionable. But my ultimate advice to you, if you are given an instruction, I would tell you to obey it. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, because if you don't obey it, it's going to arrest you. And the experience of being arrested is not a pleasant one. And I might say here, well, if you disobey this particular instruction, you'll be found not guilty. I'm never going to say that. I've been a lawyer long enough to know that you can never say to anybody, I can guarantee you'll be found not guilty. The world is not like that. You could be found guilty because the law's a bit funny. If an official gives you an instruction which they have the legal power to give and you disobey it, even if they weren't legally entitled to give it at that moment, you could still be guilty of disobeying it. Because it's a power, it's an order that they do have the right to give, even if they shouldn't have done it at that time. Right, it makes sense to lawyers. I can see all of you going, ugh. But basically, if you disobey an instruction, okay, yeah, call me, I'll come around and defend you, and hopefully you'll be found not guilty, but I'm not going to guarantee it. And I don't want any of you to get a criminal conviction. It could affect your job, it could affect lots of other things, and in any event, it's a pretty unpleasant process. We want to avoid that. If you are ultimately given an instruction by the police, we will obey it, get in contact with Thomas More Legal Centre, we will then engage with the police, which we've done. We've done in London, Twickenham, we've done it in Doncaster, and in Twickenham, they were issued with forms which were supposed to deal with riot and serious public disorder. And it was from a lawyer's point of view, it was quite fun because the instruction says, the police reasoning said, I have serious ground to believe there's a risk of public disorder. And as I pointed out to the Metropolitan Police, the law says there has to be reasonable grounds to believe that the risk of serious public disorder. A serious risk of public disorder is not the same as a risk of serious public disorder. And the Met Police solicitor said, oh yeah, right. Okay, yeah, forget about that instruction. We've had a word with the police officers involved. And so Twickenham carried on. As I say, keep the bigger picture in mind. Whatever you're doing at your local 40 Days for Life is important. Of course it is. But you don't want to become a cause celeb. You don't want to do something which could cause people to take a photograph which could misrepresent 40 Days for Life. The bigger picture is more important than that. And also, getting the police on your side is important. Getting them to see you as being reasonable people who are trying to engage with them, telling them what you're doing, explaining. These are our pictures. These are our documents. This is what we show people. Right. What we don't do, tell them what you don't do. We do not stop people entering clinic because you don't have any legal right to stop anybody entering a clinic. That's what they will have been told. You're stopping people entering. Say, no, we don't. They were told you're videoing. No, we don't. Not under any circumstances whatsoever. What are your rights? I told you, having told you not to mention human rights, I'm going to mention them. There again, I'm the lawyer here. Human Rights Act 1998, European Convention on Human Rights. I get a bit annoyed by the European Convention on Human Rights because certain human rights lawyers sort of talk as if England never had human rights until 1998, when the European Convention came into force. You know, well, this last year we celebrated the 800th anniversary of Magna Carta, England's great contribution to human rights in the world. It's actually quite significant that the memorial at Runnymede to Magna Carta wasn't put there by any English organisation. It was put there by the American Bar Association, because they actually recognised the importance of Magna Carta to the development of democracy and freedom. However, we've got to deal with, you know, human rights, European Convention. You have a right to free expression, and importantly, people have a right to receive ideas. Okay? Interesting point. I have the right to express my view about abortion. You have the right to hear it. Because if you're trying to talk to somebody and others are trying to pull them away, they are interfering with that person's human rights to hear what you have to say. If they're trying to stop you distributing your leaflets, they are interfering with the human rights of other people to hear what you have to say. Other people have a right not to listen to you. They have a right to walk away. They have a right to, well, they don't have a right to throw away your leaflet because that's littering. But, you know, they have a right to ignore it, but you have a right to express it in a non-violent, non-confrontational way. You can't abuse people. Sure, none of you would. But the accusation will always be that you have. One important point is you can't. You do have a right to manifest religion. And that's interesting because a little while ago, Good Counsel, I think Good Counsel people are here, they got this sort of letter from Mary Stopes threatening all sorts of injunctions and other things and making all sorts of allegations about them. Included amongst the allegations were the fact that they were there with blue and pink rosary beads. Now, Good Counsel got in contact with me, and I sort of wrote to Mary Stopes' lawyer. It was probably one of the sort of least meetings of minds I've had in my legal career. I mean, I decided there wasn't really much point in trying to sort of engage with Mary Stopes on a sort of an intellectual, emotional level. So I sort of said, yes, my clients do hold blue and pink rosary beads. The blue rosary beads represent the baby boys killed by your organisation. The pink ones represent the baby girls killed by your organisation. They have the right to hold rosary beads under Article 9, the European Convention on Human Rights, as a manifestation of their religion. You know? And the other point was, and it was interesting with the Mary Stopes case, was they then made allegations. Well, you're harassing people entering and including assaulting. There was a case of an assault. So I said, well, could you actually tell me who actually was assaulted? Was it reported to the police? Could you give me the crime record number? If it wasn't reported to the police, could you plainly explain why? I'm still waiting for a reply to that question, by the way. But it is a point that Good Counsel had the sense not to get engaged in arguments with Mary Stopes' people there, but come and try and get myself or others to engage with them on a legal basis and say, sorry, you have no legal basis for this. It's rubbish. You haven't got any evidence. Because I think that's the point. If the police come along and say, well, we're being told this, say, well, who's saying it? Is it the people in the clinic? You know, we don't do it. It's, you know, we don't do these sort of things. Tell us who's saying it. Because the police know they've got to have some evidence. So what are the sort of criminal offences you could be threatened with? Section 5, Public Order Act. Yes, good old Section 5. All police officers know it off by heart. Threatening or abusive words or behaviour or disorderly behaviour within the hearing or sight of a person likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress thereby. So even I know it. And display of threatening or abusive writing, sign or other visible representation. Right, well that's where I'm going to assume you're not threatening or abusive, but if you're alleged to be taking photographs or videoing people going in, they could say, I find that threatening. What you say is, no, we don't. We may take photographs of ourselves. We may video a conversation that the police are having with us, but we do not video people going into the clinic. And the reason why we don't is because that's threatening. Display a threatening or abusive writing, sign, or other visible representation. This has caused a bit of a problem with Abort 67 because they use very graphic pictures. Now, they're not alone in this. I've defended and, in my time, prosecuted animal rights demonstrators who turn up with, quite often at demonstrations, with some very graphic pictures of foxes or whatever, and that's legitimate. But there is this dislike of the pictures of aborted babies. And I think there's a real issue there about whether such display of such picture is more counterproductive than productive. In any event, if you display them, that could be considered of threatening or abusive. Defence conduct is reasonable. You're engaged in a reasonable protest, you're engaged in expression, free expression. But it does mean think about what you're writing on your signs. All abortionists are murderers. No, probably not a good idea. Even if that's what you believe. But remember, what the whole point of this meeting, the whole point is conversion. Not attacking. It's persuasion, it's conversion. Not saying you're evil people. Important point to bear that in mind. So also bear in mind that you may get some people infiltrating your group with the objective of being abusive or threatening to get your group into trouble. If you have somebody who is being a bit out of line, do not hesitate to say to them, sorry, we don't put up with that. We don't do that. Kindly leave. If the police arrive, you can even be prepared to say, well, I'm sorry, this person has been shouting abuse. He's nothing to do with us. We have told him or her to stop doing it. Be sure to distance yourselves as a group if there are people who have turned up. Either may be troublemakers, or they may alternatively be cranks, bluntly, who are sympathetic to yourself, but just don't recognise that there has to be how you put things over is important. And don't be afraid to, because if you don't, you will be tarred with the same brush. You can also be accused of, under the Protection from Harassment Act, of intending to persuade any person not to do anything they're entitled to do, or to do something they're not under any obligation to do. Stopping somebody not to do something they're entitled to do. Well, people are entitled to go into a clinic. Whether you like it or not, they are. But, of course, you're not there stopping them. That's the important point. You're there in the hope that you might persuade them, or you might persuade people inside to change what they're doing. And the other danger you may face is, I've already mentioned it, Public Order Act, Section 14, where the police come over and serve a notice because they're worried about serious public disorder. And there's a new one I just came across. Doncaster? Are you people from Doncaster here? Hi. Hi, folks. Yep. Doncaster, been the my learning process for the Antisocial Crime and Policing Act. Community Protection Notice. What's that? I thought to myself. I didn't actually say that to the clients because they expect you to know all these things. I just thought, oh, well, all right, yeah, what's that? Hang on. Look up what's come in force recently. Conduct of an individual or body is having a detrimental effect of a persistent or continuing nature on the quality of life, those in the locality, and the conduct is unreasonable. it's one of the, in modern law, we're going in for the very broad brush sort of approaches to try and stop just about anything that somebody disapproves of. You are going to get landed with those. By the way, the people in Doncaster were threatened with arrest if they didn't sign a form acknowledging receipt of the notice. Can I just inform you, you have no legal obligation to sign. Because if they serve it on you, provided it's served, then it's served, whether you sign for it or not. But once again, it's a bit difficult to argue with a big police officer there with his flak jacket telling you to sign, otherwise they'll arrest you. Do just take a collar number, let me know, and we'll report it. We'll complain about it subsequently. These are the things that will happen. Your job is to try and react calmly, engage politely, and hopefully, and I'm quite sure in the longer term, to persuade the police and others that what you are doing is a perfectly legitimate and reasonable activity which you have every legal right to continue to do.